I get to talk every day to people in different parts of society about my passion for employee ownership, which I think is the best kept business model secret of our time. Because it's a proven common sense pathway to reduce inequality, to anchor jobs in communities like South Bend or Cleveland, where I live, and to help families and communities build wealth. The roots of it for me are in my own sort of personal experience of living on the economic margins. I'm a high school dropout. I left home real young, and for a time, although fortunately for me it was a short time, I lived in low-income housing and experienced, what it's like when you have insect infestations and neighbors with drug addiction, and you fall asleep each night to the sound of domestic violence. The experience of poverty, it's more than just the condition of suffering. It's the psychological effects and what you begin to believe about yourself and your worth. Because those are the messages that you're getting back from society and from that system. And so that's where I really discovered the what of my calling. And that's to do work to promote economic justice and economic equality so that others don't have to experience some of what I experienced. But I didn't find the how of my calling till many years later. I spent my 20s pouring myself into any good cause that would have me. I was a teacher, micro-entrepreneur. I did campaign work, worked for President Obama for a while. That was a ride in '08. Did some local business and arts organizing. I even managed a rock band. We had sort of a anti-consumerist message, and then we were going to change the world. But what I found was that through all of these different efforts, we were really only ever addressing the symptoms of inequality and never the root causes. And what I was looking for was a scalable approach, a sustainable approach that could get at those root causes. So I began a path of vocational seeking toward the end of my 20s. Went down a lot of alleys and dead ends. But eventually found my way to employee ownership. It was funny, actually, one night I was drinking in a bar with an activist friend, and he said, gosh, I know you're frustrated, Jessica, with what you've been working on so far and how it's not getting at those root causes, but you ought to go home and read about the Evergreen Cooperative Initiative in Cleveland, Ohio, and read about how folks in Cleveland have formed a mutually supportive network of employee-owned companies that are creating jobs for people in disinvested communities who have severe barriers to employment, 55% formerly incarcerated, 85% people of color, almost all coming out of pretty extreme poverty. Go home and read about that and how business is the tool that they're using to create better opportunities for folks, because they've set these companies up as employee-owned, and that means that employees not only have a job with a living wage, but they also participate in profit sharing and in governance and corporate decision-making. And I said, oh my gosh, and I went home and I read about it, and that was it. And that's the path that led me to Notre Dame, to the Mendoza School of Business to do my MBA, and eventually to my current role, where I get the privilege of working with the Evergreen Cooperatives and other great employee-owned companies every day. It's really non-controversial. It's a market-based solution to inequality. Republicans like it because it makes more entrepreneurs, and because it gives a pathway for folks to improve their economic destinies without a social safety net programs. Democrats like it because it broadens the ownership of assets, which are the foundation of the economy. So it's a bipartisan solution, which is rare in today's day and age. There's a study that came out that was put together by the National Center for Employee Ownership and funded by the Kellogg Foundation, just released about a year and a half ago, that compared workers in employee-owned firms to their peers in firms with traditional ownership. And what they found was that workers between the ages of 28 and 34, those in employee-owned firms had 92% greater household net worth than those in firms with traditional ownership. They also had, I think, 33% higher pay, and we're 50% less likely to be laid off during a recession. I don't know what else you need to know. No?